Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
The environment is what needs to be changed for someone to thrive. Just like when we plant lettuce, if the lettuce isn't doing well, we don't blame the lettuce. We look at what's the soil like, the sunlight, the water, the nutrients. And so we really need to be looking at the environment.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Success Magnified and the Biz Bestie Getaway, where empowered women entrepreneurs turn challenges into opportunities in a weekend filled with connection and fun. Join us in Colorado this October to rejuvenate your business spirit, make lasting friendships, and learn new strategies for success. Visit us at successmagnified.com/events and secure your spot now. Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. So we've known each other for a while. I am so excited to have been a part of your journey to land your TEDx stage. And now you're out there spreading the word about neurodivergence and helping people who are highly gifted. And I've learned so much from you as well in that aspect, which is something that more people need to be talking about. Now I have the pleasure of having you here on the show to teach us and to share with us more. So why don't you tell us who you are and what you do to start off?
Yeah. So my entrepreneurship journey actually started when I was 10 years old, and I started a business in my basement. And the kids would come and do a day camp, and me and my best friend would run it. And we had themes like the Halloween themed one where they got to trick or treat and make crafts and snacks and all kinds of fun stuff. And I also loved to teach and came from a long line of educators. And I ended up becoming a speech language pathologist and worked in the school system for a long time, and quickly realized that when the neurodivergent kids who were wired differently and learned differently weren't thriving, it wasn't because of anything that was wrong with them. It was really because the system wasn't designed for how they learn. And so I shifted into a leadership role to really change the environment and look at how we could create inclusive learning opportunities, and did a lot of training for the educational leaders and staff around transformational learning. And then my kids got identified as neurodivergent, and that began the journey of me discovering my own neurodivergence and realizing that my own needs weren't met. But the work environment wasn't inclusive for me either. And so that's when I started my business to really support people to create inclusive learning opportunities and systems for their clients.
Yeah. Oh, what an amazing journey from noticing this in your work to then learning more about it for your family and for yourself, and now helping other people that are adults that may have not learned this or been supported as they were growing. So I would love for you to kind of give us a little bit of a context in terms of the early signs or things that parents can look for before we jump into entrepreneurs who are neurodivergent or who work with neurodivergent individuals so that they can be aware of it. Let's talk about, as a child, what are some things that maybe parents that are listening could be looking out for?
Well, the first important thing to understand is neurodivergent is an umbrella term that covers over 500 different identities. And so there's huge diversity within that term of different traits that people might present with. And it really is just acknowledging that those people fall outside of what society deems as typical, and what a lot of our spaces, whether it's education or work or community spaces, are built for. So if you're noticing that your child is differently wired, falling outside of the norm, intense in many ways, some of the common traits of neurodivergent people are the 5 intensities. That's from Dabrowski's research. And so you might look for emotional intensity, where they experience emotions a little bit deeper than most, both high highs of joy and excitement when they love something, and also the fear and anxiety or the deep sadness when something's unfair, and anger, things like that. The second intensity is sensory intensity, where you're really hyper aware of either loving art and music, things that you love are that much more intense. So, soft things. And then also deep disgust at certain smells or tastes or food textures, loud sounds, things like that. And then there's the imaginational intensity, lots of creativity and imagining, daydreaming, it can look like. The psychomotor is high movement or brain activity, a very active mind. And then the last one is intellectual, just those avid readers that can never get enough of the learning.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us, because we all notice little things about our kids. I know I do. So knowing that there's something behind that, something for us to explore to help them learn better or to just have a better life and feel better about living is very, very helpful. Now let's transition into being an adult and not learning any of these things as a kid, your parents not really knowing. And I think especially for those of us who are millennials, we grew up in an era where it was like, everyone's the same, just go. And things have changed, right? And now, I guess now I have a question on that. Why do you think this has changed? Why have we paid more attention to this? What was the turning point, even for you too?
Yeah, well, the systems of identification are getting more precise and accessible in schools. And so I hear over and over of parents realizing their own identity once their kids get identified. And that seems to be a huge piece of it. Okay. Our understanding of what it looks like in populations that weren't originally in the research has expanded. And so basically the research on, for example, ADHD, autism, giftedness, a lot of these were focused on white boys. And so it does present differently in girls and women and in intersectional populations, whether it's BIPOC or different, there can be sort of masking of if somebody's in a lower, higher socioeconomic status, more resources in their community. So now that we know how it can present differently as people are sharing their lived experience, we're able to identify like, oh, I didn't fit the traditional stereotype, or I even went and got tested, but that test was normed on white boys and it didn't identify me, and it's expanding.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. More awareness for sure. As we get more connected as well, through technology and all of those things. Now, tell us more about being a neurodivergent entrepreneur, and then I do want to touch on working with neurodivergent clients and learners. But let's start with being a neurodivergent entrepreneur, such as yourself, how you go about your day, how you handle things, because we all know this entrepreneurial journey is a roller coaster. And then we'll talk about the other side too.
So I've discovered that I need to stop listening to people who don't identify as neurodivergent in terms of the coaches and quote unquote experts who think they have it figured out and have a system that they think is going to work for everybody. I've really had to figure out how am I wired, what's going to work for me, and design my routines and systems in a way that's supportive of me, and really be okay with having short or long, intense periods of hyperfocus, and then periods where I'm doing a lot of self-care or imagining or going down different paths to figure things out. And often when I'm in different coaching programs and calls, I'm hearing people say things like, well, you're not disciplined enough and you just need to be an action taker. And they're really not considering all of the pieces of people's different neurodivergent ways of being and how they do things.
Yeah.
And the executive function differences that people need different supports to be able to execute what they're hoping to do.
That makes a lot of sense. And in general terms, just being more self-aware and getting to know yourself, which is something that I'm a huge proponent of with personality assessments and all of the things, so that you don't have people telling you how to be, which is what we just said, back in the day. That's what it was. This is how you are, and just be that. And now we have more awareness to be like, no, that's not how I am, and I'm going to go a different direction, and finding people that you resonate with. In the entrepreneurial space now, we talk so much about alignment. Finding somebody that is in alignment with you, with your values, but also with the way that you operate cognitively as well is very, very important. You do have an assessment to help people, and it has to do with those intensities, right? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so there are formal assessments out there, and the intensities, sort of formal term from the research, is called overexcitabilities. But I like to use the word intensity because I've always felt like I was too much. And so I'm tired of words that start with the word over.
Yeah. I
love
it.
This is more of like a screening tool for somebody who might want to get an initial sense if they might have some of the 5 intensities. And then there are more like normed research-based ones about the overexcitabilities available. And so they'll just be able to answer them. And they're really focused on adults and in the workplace, which is great for entrepreneurs. There's a lot of questionnaires out there for around the intensities or overexcitabilities for children. But it seems to be less available for adults. So that's why I developed it.
That's awesome. And I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's at www.intensityhub.com, and you can figure out what intensities you have. I love the reframe in the language. That is beautiful, because I have felt like I'm too much, or I've been told I am too much in so many ways. So let's not use the word over. Let's just say we're intense, which is pretty cool.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing, not a bad thing. Yeah. Okay. So tell us more now about how can entrepreneurs be aware of the people that they're working with? So it starts with that self-awareness. Whether you identify that you're neurodivergent or not, you must also be aware of the people that you're working with. How do we go about doing that? Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
So it's really about being curious and open to people who are different, and they themselves might not know they're neurodivergent, even if they are.
Yeah.
But if you're noticing that someone is not progressing in your program, they're not implementing the strategies and taking action, oftentimes we jump to mindset issues, and that might be part of it, because neurodivergent people do kind of grow up being told that their way of being is not quite right or doesn't fit in. But the other piece of it is really executive function. And these are skills that can often be challenging for many neurodivergent people, to be able to initiate, sustain attention, be able to prioritize, be able to break down a task into its smaller parts. So, and then emotional regulation, of regulating the anxiety that can happen. Even with that imaginational intensity, people who are visionaries and can imagine a really excellent product, if they aren't able to execute it to that level, it can be extremely frustrating for them. And that perfectionism isn't always a bad thing, because why not have high standards of excellence for ourselves? If it's not about people pleasing, then let's claim our value for excellence. And let's get the executive function support that we need to really break it down and be able to put it together to realize the vision that we have as visionaries.
Yeah, I love the reframe too. Instead of perfectionism, valuing excellence. That is what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
Also what you said about mindset. Oftentimes we jump into, oh, that your mindset is off, which could be the case, but also goes back to these people grew up hearing things from others, and that may have affected, probably, I mean, most likely affected their self awareness, their self worth, their self confidence, and all of that. And so they're just carrying that through. Are these some of the most common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs who are unaware of neurodivergence making when they're dealing with people, helping people that are neurodivergent, or are there some specific other ones that you can share with us?
Yeah, the other thing that I'm seeing a lot is language in their marketing around the medical model versus the social model of disability. And so the medical model is our healthcare system and our school systems just seeing like the deficits or the problems, something to fix. Whereas the social model says, nope, we need to change the environment. The environment is what needs to be changed for someone to thrive. Just like when we plant lettuce, if the lettuce isn't doing well, we don't blame the lettuce. We look at what's the soil like, the sunlight, the water, the nutrients. And so we really need to be looking at the environment. And the words that I see in people that are specifically marketing, like I'm an ADHD coach, or I work with autistic individuals, or highly sensitive people, I see words like a diagnosis. Well, I want to see the word identification. This is part of my identity. I don't have a disorder. I'm just different. That's not something to be fixed or cured. I see words like symptoms. I want to see words like traits or characteristics. These are not symptoms to be fixed. I have these traits or characteristics. And like anybody's traits or characteristics, sometimes they serve me and are helpful. Sometimes they present with their challenges. But I am not something to be cured or fixed. I am just who I am. This is my identity, and these are my traits.
This is very, very helpful for sure. I know for me it is, and for our listeners too, and understanding the reframe, especially the language when you're talking to people, which shows that you're more aware and more educated as well. I love that. Tell us about your TEDx journey. It was fun to get to help you and be a part of that. And you were actually called back by 2 different TEDx's and had to decide on one because it was right around at the same time. How was that experience? And tell us more about the talk and what you shared.
Yeah, so the experience was intense for me as someone with intensities. It was a year-long process from the initial time that I started and got the idea through the applications, 6 months of applications and a couple of interviews, and then getting invited. And then the actual talk that I put together ended up being different than my original idea, because I was able to work through some of my internal blocks to be able to really be authentic and share my soul on stage. And I was guarded of that at first. It felt extremely vulnerable to put myself out there. I needed a lot of executive function support through the process. I see everything as interconnected, and to get a talk to be short and organized in a way that the audience can really receive only one idea is hard. Like, I can much more easily talk for an hour straight about it than to get it down to something so concise. And so I did share about the intensities in the talk and about giftedness and how it can be seen as a rainforest mind, which is an analogy that really helped me to kind of shift away from the misconceptions that if you say you're gifted and claim that as a piece of your identity, you're being arrogant, think you're better than other people, that it's divisive. It's a neurodivergent identity, just as autistic or ADHD or dyslexic or any of the other many ones. And so to be able to claim it and stop hiding it and see it as, I have a rainforest mind, these are my intensities, I really got to sort of come out to the world, and it was part of my unmasking journey to really be who I am.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. Love the topic. Love that you shared about the vulnerability because TEDx is a special format and a special stage for you to bear it all. You have the opportunity to really dig deep, which is hard because of the vulnerability, but also it's hard because of being so focused in a short talk and delivering that one topic. But that's what makes it intense and
Mm-hmm.
very, very valuable for people receiving it. Plus, it's just an experience that's one of a kind. I always say, um, you can look at pictures of the Grand Canyon, but until you're there, you can't possibly know what it feels like to
Oh, yeah.
see that. And it's the same thing I felt. It's like being a performer in a theater, except it's the story of your life. It's not something fake that you memorized, right? It's a beautiful thing. I think everyone should have the
Uh-huh.
experience of doing that because it's such an amazing, it's cathartic in many ways. So very glad that you got to experience that. Wonderful. Do you have a book in the works? I didn't ask you this before, but I feel like with all the amazingness that you're sharing, what are your plans with future plans?
Yes. So it's it's been sort of an off and on
Okay.
type journey of getting started and then pausing and thinking that I want to shift my focus to my program that I'm doing or different talks. And so one day it will happen, but it's going to be in divine timing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As it always is. Even with TEDx, that's what I tell clients all the time. It's you just put yourself out there, go about your work, do what you do, and then it'll happen when the time comes. But obviously, take the steps and call it in. But it's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. Tell us how you work with clients. Now that you touched on that, you have your course, your programs. How can people connect with you to learn more about themselves or to be more helpful with their community as well and become more aware?
Yeah, so once people take the quiz at intensityhub.com, then they become a part of my community to be able to come on the what I call nap calls. And it's a different kind of nap than you really want because it stands for Neurodivergent Accountability Partner. And
Nice.
so I provide executive function support for people to actually get tasks done with those specific strategies. And then if they want to do a deeper dive with me, I have a 6-month program where they can really set up the systems and routines for themselves to attract neurodivergent clients, provide inclusive services, and I specialize in instructional design from my background in education. And so we actually complete a transformational learning experience, like a workshop together with that executive function support.
That's wonderful. Okay, so people can check out these accountability calls once they take your quiz and they're a part of your email list. They'll find out more
Yeah.
information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
wonderful. Yeah, so get on and take the quiz, everybody. The link is going to be in the show notes, intensityhub.com. I'm excited to go and check it out as well. And then you can join these calls and connect with other people that are on the same journey of becoming more aware for themselves and also for their community. I love that. Well, before I have you share how people can find you, I'd love to ask you my $1,000,000 question that I ask all my guests. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Meghan, what is an empowered woman then?
Somebody who steps out on the stage into the spotlight, whatever that looks like for them, and really uses their voice and is just their authentic self, living into their own purpose.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love these answers. That's why I asked this question because it's always, I've been starting a compilation. I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but hearing all these answers is so encouraging because everybody says something similar, but also very different, specific, especially to their work and to their life story. And it's just fun for me. So thank you for sharing. Well, how can people find you? How can they connect with you? Where do you hang out the most?
So the best way to stay connected is intensityhub.com to get my emails because I really send stories and little tidbits of micro learning information around neurodiversity and the intensities. And then I also hang out on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Nice. Awesome. So we will have all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Meghan. This was so informational, so enlightening. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I had fun.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.